our value as women has always been tied into whether or not, you know what I'm saying? We can get a man, keep a man, whatever the case may be, even if they knew that that wasn't the right way to teach them. It doesn't mean that they haven't passed that down. Like what we were talking about with Velvet, like it's still a spiritual heirloom that we're passing down to young women.
Welcome to the Networking with Michelle podcast, the show dedicated to providing you with life strategies with a little bit of entrepreneur advice. Here we believe in the Jim Rohn quote, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Hey everyone, today's special guest is Holly Charles.
Hello.
She's the author of Velvet and creator of In All Thy Getting and the new play, I'm Still a Woman.
Yes, I am. Since the last time I saw you, I'm still a woman. Like, I keep waking up, I can't shake it.
Okay. That's a good problem to have.
It never changes, like, every day.
Yeah. So can I say you're a creative genius at this point?
No. I don't even want that responsibility. Definitely not a genius, but I'm definitely concerned about our community. Definitely concerned about our community. And even, I'd like to say that I'm even maybe somewhat self-serving in the topics that I choose. I want to help the community, but I'm looking at things that interest me, that affect people that I know, or even myself. So a lot of people like out the gate want to know, what is I'm Still a Woman, and then why did you write it? And so when I tell people, this is an episodic stage play about infertility and women of color, they look at me and they're like, so you're a woman of color, and they want to ask the question. Yeah. And again, I said this is kind of self-serving. I have not struggled with infertility, but I'm also a 37-year-old woman who's never even tried to conceive. Right. And I'm realizing that there's a level of hopelessness in our community, and there's a level of hesitance to even discuss these things. But it's not uncommon to find a woman my age, African American woman my age, who has not conceived. There's a renaissance, and I know we've discussed this before. There's this renaissance of Black women. I used to think that these were empowerment, like mantras, this Black girl magic, Black girls rock. But no, what's happening is they're now they're celebrating what's happening with Black women. We are the most educated demographic in the U.S. We are in our own communities making up almost 70% of master and doctoral degrees in our community. But although we're the most educated demographic, and although we are, business is booming for Black women, I mean, in the last 20 years, entrepreneurship for Black women is up 322%. I don't even know how that I don't even understand that. Yeah. But if you look around you, wow, look at all these Black women that are kind of doing it for themselves, doing it for the culture, really. All these things point to the fact that we are settling later, that our dating pool has changed. It hasn't changed. I guess change is the wrong word. I think that in our community, it has definitely become more complex. Based off of, you know what I'm saying? Based off of this renaissance of Black women. It hasn't changed, but a lot of times people feel like their options are fewer. And even for Black men, I think that there probably are some issues on the reverse of what dating pool am I in? So a lot of those things kind of press us towards Black women having what they're calling these geriatric pregnancies, or getting to a point where, right, I know the word geriatric I know it's problematic. But, after 35, you're going to have a high risk pregnancy. That is just a fact. But, statistics used to convince us that Black women are not getting married. That's not true. Black women are getting married, but we're getting married a decade, later than our white counterparts. Right. So it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the Black women. Actually, we should be celebrated for all the things that we're doing. But it does change quite a bit when we actually start our families,
I have so many questions. Yeah. Right. We're going to get them all in.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit, because we are getting married later. Do you think we should groom our daughters to go to college and find a solid relationship and pursue marriage? because when I was in college, it took me 11 years to get my degree. And I was in my 20s, of course, actively dating, meeting people, but I always felt that I was not up to par unless I had my degree. So that was always the goal. Like, if I have my degree, I have something to bring to the table. And not knowing that as I got older, it would be harder to meet people, let alone qualified people.
Yeah.
So how do we teach our daughters at this stage in the game?
I mean, therein lies the dilemma, which is why we have to have the conversations, because I think the first part of your question was whether or not we should be grooming them to go and try to find that level of stability as far as family is concerned.
Right.
I don't think we've ever stopped teaching girls in general that. It just contradicts the culture. So, I mean, I think that we've always, even if it was in short whispers from your grandmother or insinuated by your neighbors or whatever the case may be, our value as women has always been tied into whether or not, you know what I'm saying? We can get a man, keep a man, whatever the case may be, even if they knew that wasn't the right way to teach them. It doesn't mean that they haven't passed that down. Like what we were talking about with Velvet, like it's still a spiritual heirloom that we're passing down to young women. Now, even if it's not being passed down to the men so that actually balances out, it's still being passed down. And we can't force those things to happen. The world is changing, and specifically for African-American women, because we're talking about what's happening here in this country. Things have changed so much to where we are kind of leading our own households. Yeah. But we also, in order to start a family, we're having to look at other options. In order, so traditional motherhood for a lot of women, especially women like me, I may not be able to conceive naturally or traditionally, but motherhood is still 100% a choice. And that's what this stage play is about. It's about saying, like, why do we got to be sad about it? I choose to be a mother. It may not be today. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if I will decide to have a gestational carrier, a surrogate. I don't know if I'll have to go through IVF. I don't know if I will just be fine and just have to be very careful throughout a high risk pregnancy. I don't know if I'll choose to adopt. I don't know if I'll freeze my eggs. I don't know if I'll decide, you know what, you've been telling me all my life to be happy with myself, and now I figured out I am. But there's a gamut of choices. And that's what we got to discuss. If we don't discuss it, then it's just like this undercover thing where everyone feels like there's something wrong with you because you didn't carry a child. And that is absolutely, it's demeaning, degrading, and it's counterproductive, especially looking at Black women and where we are and looking at the Black family unit as it is. It's unrealistic right now for us to say that we have to carry traditionally.
It's so interesting because I do feel that society, when I say society, I'm speaking in general, and if you want to break it down to our community, that's fine. It's the fact that so much of womanhood is defined by that. So do you believe if we carry this open dialogue that we can eventually change our allow people to be open-minded and receptive to these other options and processes?
100%. Just the conversations that I've had in creating this play, just the writing process, because this is the thing, I'm including myself. Again, I keep telling you that, I care about my community, but I'm also doing some things that are kind of self-serving. There have obviously been some insecurities and fears of my own, right? That's an obvious thing because I do want to be a mother. I kind of had to do the research myself, and other people aren't put in a position to have to do it. So what I started doing was looking at what my options are, looking at the percentage of IVF success, looking at how much it costs, looking at, why do we talk so much about testing a man's sperm count, but we never talk about women taking tests to check their ovarian reserve, something that is very simple and inexpensive. Why are we not talking about how much it costs to store eggs? Why are we not, I think that this dialogue has made it even easier for me to talk to my own significant other about what our options are if we're not saying, hey, we're headed to the altar, or that we're ready to have children, even if we did, head to the altar. Right. So the whole point of I'm Still a Woman is to sit down and say, look, we don't have to be sad about this. What we're doing is we're showing you all of the options because life has carried us maybe, down a pathway that we didn't plan. you know, and it doesn't mean that it's a bad path. Right. Like, you know, I haven't had a poor quality of life,
right?
You know, I'm happy with the things that I've accomplished so far. So it doesn't mean that I've made any mistakes or anything like that. But biologically, physically, I may not be able to do it the way I see it in the movies. You know what I'm saying? And so I need to prepare for that. So to me, this is a celebration. It's saying, regardless of whether or not I carry traditionally, I'm still a woman. This is a proclamation.
I love it.
You know, I think that in order to be a mother, you have to be a woman. And then some people are getting that twisted, that in order for you to be a woman, you have to be a mother. And that's not the truth. I think it's even useful for women who come to the show and say, I'm not even sure if I want to have children. This is for you too. That's what, it's okay.
Right.
You know, we keep pushing it on women that, you know, we don't want you to have no regrets. Well, I don't want to regret bringing a child into the world either, if that's not something that I was ready for or something, or if I did it at a time. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that we have to celebrate womanhood regardless of how or if we get to the place of motherhood. You know?
That does make sense. And I think probably within the past 3 years, I've been seeing a lot more articles celebrating, I want to say the single woman that is an auntie, right? And is able to carry that form of motherhood, which is really responsibility, because she's still part of the community. She's still part of the family, and she deserves just as much as acknowledgement compared to the biological mother.
Yeah, and we're natural nurturers. Right. That doesn't change, you know. And I think that we have this, you know, one thing that I find a lot of humor in. It's sad, but we have to find humor in some things. And I don't want people to sit through an hour and 15 minutes of people crying. Like, that's not the point. The goal is to even check yourself. If you have no issues with fertility, what we're saying is, you got to be real careful about checking into somebody else's uterus. And that's something that we're not discussing, some of the insensitivity that people have. Because I'm looking at you. I'm sure that people have come to you and they do it because they love and they care. But it's still inappropriate sometimes to ask certain questions without having a certain level of, comfortability with that person. If I have not brought it up, I don't need you to, you know, on my trip to the bathroom, you know, at work, for you to be like, you know, I was thinking, you know, ain't it time for you to have some kids? You know, you running out of time. It's funny how many people just say these things as though it's advice, like you didn't know you woke up 35, 36, 37. Like, you know what you showed, right? It's not like it's not like them saying, you know, you left your lights on in the parking lot. Like, I didn't forget. Like, I know. And I think that you have to be sensitive enough to allow me to open that conversation up with you. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just went through this a couple of weeks ago, and it's funny because I called my mom for something, and you know, we said, hey, and then she was like, oh, sister, auntie's here or whatever, talk to her. And I was like, okay, I haven't heard from her in a while. So cool. So she gets on the phone and, hey, Michelle, how are you? I'm good. How come you don't have children yet? Like,
whoa.
Like, I've been single. Like, you just skip over the relationship. And in short, she said that, and I hope I don't mess this up, but basically she said, I will never regret having kids. Right. Or excuse me, I will never regret missing out on a relationship, but I will regret having kids if I don't have kids. And but the thing was, I felt like there could have been a more subtle way of having the conversation. Or just asking me. I think I'm a pretty open person when it comes to conversation. But the fact that she came, usually this conversation is so aggressive.
Yes, it is.
And then I know me personally, I get so defensive. It's like, I don't even want to talk to you.
I don't want to talk about it at all. and this is the thing. We're talking about the fact that I'm sure someone's listening saying, but you just contradicted yourself. You said we need to talk about it, but then you don't want to talk about it.
It's the approach.
It's not only the approach. Of course, it's the approach, but it's also who are you to me in that moment, and why you decide to do that. I don't need for you to open up my insecurities more than I need for you to, put some salve on them. Like I didn't intend on you, and a lot of times people do it at the most inopportune times. And no matter what, it's going to be a tough conversation. I'm not saying that this is the conversation that people will be laughing and joking about every single day. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I think that friend to friend, I think that you should be careful about the way that you handle people's emotions. Right. Having children is a huge deal. And I think that what I found, at least for myself, is a lot of people assume because they've seen me work in the community, because they've seen me do this or do that I've made a choice. So what they're doing is reprimanding me for making the choice to wait, not totally understanding that's not exactly what I've done. I've made a choice to wait to build a particular family. I haven't made the choice to not have children, but people, they make their assumptions. And so I do think that be open to have conversation with someone. It's not that we should shut women out if you have a question. I just think, remember who you are in their lives and remember to do it at, in an appropriate time. I mean, I don't think you should do that at the family cookout in front of Granny. And, that's not the time. It's not the time.
Making a whole scene.
Yeah, it's like, so I don't even know how to answer this honestly because this is not the place. Yeah. Should I say, I've said to someone else before, I was a little frustrated, and I said, well, the same fears you got, I got. What you want me to do about them? So, and that's my defensive. That's my defensive. What do you want me to do today? I get you don't want me to ruin my life, but what do you want me to do today? And again, that's being defensive. But I think that if there's a mother who is worried about the insecurities of her daughter, you should probably bring her to see a play like I'm Still a Woman. If there's someone who is saying, I'm 35, 36, I still, I'm working on some degrees, I'm not sure if I even want to do this. Yes, we want you to come and, and sit with the panel and ask the questions and figure out what your options are. Culturally, we don't, and that's another issue, we don't engage in a lot of proactive care. We talk about preventative care, but then there's something else. There's proactive care to, again, like checking your ovarian reserve, just to see, am I a person who should be freezing now? And if I'm a good candidate to freeze now, is that something that I want? Am I okay with simply not using my own eggs? Am I, I'm trying to say, it's like all these different questions. For some people, the priority is to carry. So whether that means that they're going to get an egg donor and a sperm donor, and for some people, that's the experience they have to have. For others, the experience is simply motherhood, and I'm okay as long as I have a child. For some,
right.
So ask yourself those questions. It doesn't make you any less a woman. It means that there are other options, and thank God that, there's science that kind of helps push us towards, our other options. That's what we're celebrating.
I'm glad you are mentioning all of these options. And lately, we've been seeing a lot of women celebrities that are older, probably that we've grown up with and admired, and they're probably definitely over 35, maybe even in their 40s. We have Tyra Banks, Janet Jackson, great women, great careers. Like we have watched them from start to finish blossom, and now they're having babies with these options. What do you think? Is this maybe a different kind of inspiration that we could still take from these women? Or, what are some lessons that we should learn from a Tyra Banks or a Janet Jackson when it comes to motherhood?
Exactly, the fact that they're still mothers. We've not looked at one of them. We did not look at Tyra and say, well, she ain't no real mother, right? You know what I'm trying to say? Nobody is.
It's a good point.
I mean, we've been amazed. I mean, of course we were amazed. Yeah. Janet Jackson, 50 years old to have a baby. And more recently, even Brigitte Nielsen just had a baby at 54. Now that's not exactly what I'm trying to do, but it does, it makes them no less a woman. It makes them no less a mother. Yeah. So I'm proud of those women for coming out and saying, and I hate to even say coming out like it's something to be, what I'm saying, to be ashamed of, but I'm glad that they're speaking to their experiences because they're not the only ones. Right. They're not the only ones. I'm not in front of a camera, but my life has led me in a direction very similar to yours, minus the millions of dollars in the bank, you know what I mean? But my lifestyle is very similar. So it makes me feel comfortable with the fact that, you know what, we got to look at other options. And it makes it so that I can talk to my significant other and not feel so ashamed that I can't do this thing for him. You know, culturally, these things, the culture has shifted, and Black women don't tend to get married until after the age of 33. So even if, and I talked to another friend of mine who she said, you know what, I was telling her about all the different characters, and I was kind of giving her an inside, track to some of the characters' lives. And she was saying, let's not forget that there are some of us who had children younger. And then once we were a little bit more stable and have found that stability in a husband, in a soulmate, now that they would like to carry a child with that particular husband, they're not able to. And it's like, so, and then people make them feel ashamed to even discuss that. Well, you got 4 kids, you had your fun. And then people, they're dismissive of the fact that, but now this is, of course they're his children too, but now I would love to have a child with my husband. So we have to address all these different issues.
What is some tips, advice that you can give us when we get to the point where, okay, I need to start, I'm learning. So it's like, okay, I need to look into these options, but how do I start that conversation? Maybe with my mother or my significant other and my closest friends. Like, this has been on my mind. This is what I'm looking into.
I think exactly the way that you just started the conversation, and it's not easy. I'm not saying these are easy conversations, which is why I decided to, dedicate this amount of time and effort to, like, having an excuse. Like, we have to build excuses for people to find information, and that's, we really do. And so I'm creating an excuse for a lot of women to go home and and pick up the phone and call Bae, and say, hey, I learned XYZ, and just being open, to those conversations. So, I don't know if there's a magic way.
Or you could be responsible by your ticket.
There you go. You can be responsible.
Buy your ticket to the play.
Ticket and then I'm Still a Woman. Plug. All of the tickets are available now at HoustonPlayOnPurpose.com. HoustonPlayOnPurpose.com.
I'm sure someone's ribs going to be hurting. They're trying to get that elbow.
When they get the little elbow. Yeah. But I remember when we had our last conversation, we were talking about self-care, and we were talking about, like, what does that mean? And a lot of people think self-care is like getting, like a pedicure, you know what I'm saying, pouring like some milk and roses on your feet, like, and that's all good, right? If that's what you need. But I think that even my research suggests, and what we'll see in the play, is that self-care includes being informed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And being informed doesn't mean that everybody's going to do the exact same thing. I can be informed and still decide that I'm going to rely very heavily on my faith in God and look at other options that have nothing to do with me carrying. It doesn't mean that I have to have a scientific ending to my story. That's my business. That's my preference. It's my life. It's my prerogative. But self-care does mean knowing your options. And it doesn't mean that you have to be in the middle of crisis before you do it.
Right.
Right. So in the play, the whole point is this. I always want to have an information piece. When I started Houston Play on Purpose, I never would have written the first play if I didn't feel like there was a need to raise awareness. I had no intentions of becoming a playwright. I wanted to work on like another book. But then when I saw how it impacted people so quickly, you know what I'm saying? It was kind of like within an hour and a half, people left informed and were able to go and talk to other people. It was this huge ripple effect. I thought, okay, maybe, you know what I'm saying? If we had 1,500 people out over one weekend to learn about the largest ex-slave settlement in the U.S. And even if they didn't realize, they had like little nuggets, just from looking at the story. And I thought, what if we could repeat that with, with other underserved populations? So that's what Houston Play on Purpose is about. And I want to continue to I want to entertain you. Yeah. I want you to feel entertained. I'm a writer. I'm a creative. But within that, all of the research that I've done, I want to be able to infiltrate the entertainment portion. So we've been really, really lucky to have the Houston Area Urban League decided to buy out our opening show. And we're going to add a piece to that particular show where immediately following, as soon as the actors take a bow, we will have a panel with myself, 2 representatives, doctors from the Houston Fertility Institute, as well as the Texas Adoption Resource Exchange. And we'll have 1 testimonial. So that way, before you leave that room, you can ask the questions that you want to ask. And for even for the other shows, they will be available outside of the show. And no, that's not time for you to tell all of your business in front of people, but it is time for you to walk away with some literature, with a pamphlet, with a card, so that you can go and, whether it's taking care of uterine fibroids, whether it is freezing your eggs or trying to test for your ovarian reserve, or it's for you and your husband to have a name, let's go to the Fertility Institute and let's get tested and let's see what's going on. I want people to leave with information that continues to affect their lives positively. That's the point.
I think what I love about the idea of the panel and having that Q&A part, it kind of goes back to the celebrity question, because even though we do see a Tyra Banks or a Janet Jackson, they're like, well, they have the money.
People always say that.
They have the money. And it's, but with you having the Q&A aspect, it's like, these are regular people I can touch, and I have the ability to ask them questions or concerns that I may be going through. Yeah,
and we want people to do it in real time. Because we already know that there's shame associated with it. I would hope that after an hour and 15 minutes, people just leave totally enlightened and with no shame, but that doesn't go away overnight. So what I'm saying is, the goal is for you to, in real time, be given an opportunity to ask something that you might be too afraid to ask next week.
What advice do you have for our men regarding this issue?
I'm so glad you asked. I really am, because I noticed men tend to, how do I want to say it? I was talking about, obviously, I've been in education for 15 years, and we were talking about feminism. And I said something about someone being a feminist, and the guy was like, well, I can't be a feminist. And I said, well, why can't you?
Right.
And he totally, men tend to say, well, if that's a woman's issue, it doesn't affect me. But I'm thinking, it's kind of like we were talking about, like the gender wage gap. And, and men were like, well, that just ain't really my fight. And I'm thinking, so you don't care that your wife isn't making what she should make because that affects you. We tend to act like, oh, that's a woman's issue, so you ain't got nothing to do with me. Ooh, thank God I'm a man. Baby, when you marry another Black woman, an accomplished, beautiful, successful Black woman, because there's so many out here to choose from, when you find that woman, this is your issue. So this is something where men can become informed too, and even open up and kind of understand what a woman is going through. It's not solitary. I think the shame sometimes feels that way. Right. But it's not a solitary thing. I mean, these husbands have to deal with the exact same thing. You may be the person who actually helps her to get through it or pushes her towards another one of her options. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Instead of letting her, I guess, inactivity kind of push her towards more shame. So this affects you too. Anything that affects the woman is going to affect the man, So, they definitely should be involved and informed.
Do you think women's infertility, do you think that should be right up there with premarital counseling? Okay, fine. We discuss finances and credit, premarital we're engaged, check. Do you think it should be up there with that?
For certain people, yes. I think that we all carry issues differently. And I'm saying that from what I'm seeing, the research I'm seeing is that although this kind of is disproportionately affecting our community because of, it's very specific to the Black woman.
Right.
If it's affecting us, we have to maybe, engage with our counselors about that, engage in even opportunities like this to get information. For someone, they may deal with it a little bit differently, but I can definitely see where we get so much of our self-worth from marriage and children.
Yeah.
So much of it. And men might get their self-worth from other things, you know, so maybe they don't, again, it's so easy for them to feel like they can remove themselves from it. But for a woman, it's like, no, but this is my identity, you know? So do I think that there are some women who probably need to at least engage in some sort of counsel or information seeking about this? Yeah, 100%, you know, 100%. There are just too many things. As I was doing my research, there were too many things that pointed at the Black woman and that said, this makes you more likely, more likely, more likely. It was, if I were to go down the list, by the time we're 50 years old, like, you know, 80 to 90% of Black women are going to have uterine fibroids. If they're large enough, then that affects your fertility by 30 to 40%. Black women start their periods earlier than any other race. That also contributes to uterine fibroids. Our hair relaxers and other products that we use, the chemicals that sometimes can seep into the scalp if you're burnt, that adds to, you know what I'm trying to say? When you look at, again, us being the most educated demographic in the U.S., surpassing white men, Asian women, any other group, that adds to the fact that we have delayed motherhood. If you look at, you know, entrepreneurship, that adds to, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, you look culturally at the fact that our socioeconomic status, even though we're doing the most, we're not getting paid for it. Even in the state of Texas, we can say that women make 63 cents on the dollar, but a Black woman in Texas makes 58 cents. All of these things, I mean, everything is pointing to the fact that by the time we're ready, it's like we have more difficulties. Yeah. You know, so Black women are less successful at IVF. And when I first saw that, that was super disturbing. I was like, oh my God, okay, well, let me research what's the problem with what's wrong with our bodies? Is not taking it? IVF is only 23% successful. So it's still a miracle when you know. On the
successful overall or on the first try?
On the first try.
Okay.
So there's a 23% chance that you will become pregnant, you know, when you are engaged in IVF. That's why most people have to continue to do it. And for a lot of Black couples, they can't afford to do it more than once. If we spent $30,000 of our money and then we spent so much taxing, like emotionally, I'm not sure if I want to spend $130,000 at the end of the day. Not even that they want to. It's not even about want, but it may not necessarily be feasible. So all of these things, there's nothing wrong with us, you know. There's nothing wrong with this, but everything that I've said in this conversation points to the fact that this makes it a little bit more difficult for a lot of these women who are becoming more and more successful. And we got to deal with that. We got to celebrate our accomplishments, and we got to celebrate being informed and know, like, even in this conversation, there was 5, 6, 7, 8 options that we have to still becoming a mother. That's you know, so I'm still a woman. I still can become a mother. Motherhood is 100% your choice. How you get there has to do with your priorities and what you're willing to do and what you feel comfortable doing. But it's still a choice. And that's where I want people to get. That's something that I needed for myself, you know?
Yeah. I love it. I feel like I need to invite every African woman.
And you know, there's a whole nother angle. Yeah. Because I want to say, when I first started writing, I was just talking about like Black and brown communities, like, you know, like Black and, you know, Latino women. And then I started, you know, someone sent me an article, as a matter of fact, about the effects on African women, even if they're like African women who come here, you know what I'm saying, first generation. And whoa, that's a whole nother beast. And it's like, okay, well, why is it such a stigma for an African woman to not have children? But then you have to really research, like, well, what happens in Africa when you don't have children? A lot of times their government systems are not set up to where you have, you know what I'm saying, Social Security and pension. So a childless woman typically is like doomed for this life of poverty in a lot of African countries. So that makes you this misfit, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, we do know that culturally, African children take care of their parents in their golden years. That stigma comes from the fact that in Africa, if you don't have children, who takes care of you?
Exactly.
So we still have people here where, you know, it's like they live here now, but there's still that mentality that your life is doomed. It's I'm a doctor. Like, I'm pretty sure that when I retire, I'm going to be good. No. You know what I'm saying? So there's like this added thing that we're also not talking about, even if they're here in the States, there's like this added dimension,
All right. So why don't you go ahead? I don't know, like, what's missing? This is such an important conversation. What is missing? What am I not asking you that you need to let everyone know?
I think you've asked a lot of the right questions. I think that for anyone who's listening, they have to ask themselves, what are you willing to do? What are you not willing to do without? Ask yourself why you're not asking the questions. But my final message is just for people to leave feeling hopeful, even if they don't come see this play. I want them to finish listening to this podcast and feel hopeful that, wait a minute, there are lots of options, and I've never heard someone explore other options and love their children any less.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I've never heard that. I've never heard, that, there's this phenomenon of women who adopted children and just realized I don't love them, or I didn't get the experience I wanted, or I didn't, you know what I'm trying to say? So I want us to be open to those things, because at the same time, a lot of us are living our best lives. We are out in the community. We are starting businesses. We are leading households. We are, you know what I'm saying? So there's so much to celebrate. And I don't want any of that to be like a woman feeling like she compromised having children in order to do these things.
Right.
This is the world we live in, and we're strong and we're resilient, and we're still women.
I've always wanted to adopt.
Me too. So I hope that the Texas Adoption Resource Exchange, and just FYI, I guess that is a question that wasn't asked as far as adoption is concerned. A lot of people feel like that's just like such an expensive option, or I'm single, and that's not necessarily the case. I started looking at 33 at adoption, just getting the information early. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel like I was ready, but I wanted to kind of know. Okay. I wanted to plan in advance for what I was willing to do.
Right.
And I found that that financially I could certainly afford. Mm-hmm. And I'll let those people who attend the play or attend the panel get those exact numbers. But it was certainly affordable. There is certainly medical help that they give afterwards for those people who are single parent homes. There are so many kids just in the state of Texas that need to be adopted. And when we look at, it's particularly young Black males, they don't get adopted. They stay in the system for so long because they are somewhat of a, air quotes, a threat. So, for me, if I adopted, I would definitely want to adopt a Black boy, So I would definitely want to adopt a young boy, because those boys are not getting adopted. So there are options. There are so many options. It doesn't have to be. I have a friend of mine who actually sent me to the state of Texas to look into adoption, and she had adopted twins, a boy and a girl, young Black boy, young Black girl. I want to say at 3 years old. Within a year and a half, they send you to certain classes, and it was so affordable. I mean, I just, again, don't want to quote their numbers, but it was so affordable. There are people who take vacations for more. Mm-hmm. And again, that's just be informed, come and get the classes, through the state of Texas, get the classes, do what you have to do. You can look at pictures. You can look at what, what I'm saying. You can look at their profiles. There are children out there that need parents.
Yeah.
There really are. There really, really are. So if carrying is not the priority for you, and you shouldn't feel ashamed either way, but if carrying is not the priority for you, then it's definitely something to consider.
I think my thing is, I know my thing is, I didn't enjoy my childhood so much. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I never wanted to be a single parent, because I don't want to bring a child into struggle.
I've thought that. Yeah. I've thought a lot about that. at 33, I still felt like I had I did have a little bit more time to think about it. And I was gung-ho. And then the more it became a reality that it could happen, I was like, but then I'm choosing to be a single mom and I'm choosing for them to, but I also don't think that is, while there will be struggle with that, I don't think it compares to the struggle that they have being in the system.
Wow. Perspective.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because it's I'm being selfish.
Or not even, and let's not even call ourselves selfish. Let's even say it may not relate even to the struggle that you have, wondering what if, or not having that love, if that's something that you wanted from a child.
Yeah.
It just doesn't compare. Again, yes, I do want a family. I do want, I want help with my child. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I do. Yeah. But again, you know what I'm saying? It's not like by not adopting, I have made anything easier for myself or this, you know what I'm trying to say, or this child.
Yeah.
I certainly haven't done anything that was like, you know what, that was the noble thing to do, was to leave that baby there. It didn't help anything.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, it's like, I'm not opposed to adopting, but I just feel that there was times, I spent the first 12 years with my mom, and there was things, I think, basically there was things that I missed out on, right? That I wasn't able to take advantage of.
Yeah.
And then I spent 5 years with my dad and his wife, which is a 2-parent, but I still felt like there was still a bit of struggle there. There were things that I was missing. I felt like I was never in that environment to live to my fullest potential from, up to the age of 17. So it's like, I want to be able to, I have this idea of parenthood that like, I want to be able to like do things. Like if they want to play basketball, okay. They want to play the violin, okay. Yeah. Like, and I'm not saying, of course there'll be some rational conversation behind it. Like, okay, hold on, you need to make up your mind. You can do one thing. Right. But I think because, I want to say there was so much lack. I was never able to like nurture any skills or, just.
Right. Thing, and you want to provide that for a child.
Exactly.
But I think sometimes it's easier for us to be like optimistic about what type of home we'll have. We'll say all these affirmations like in 5 years I'm gonna have this, I'm gonna
right.
And then when we look at it like, like a child involved, suddenly, we kind of look at it like it's destitution. I'm gonna live in a one room shack if I had to, I'm trying to say, like, I think that you still, how they keep that same energy, when it comes to children. I mean, again, I'm not advocating for anybody who's struggling to go and put a child in a poor situation, but they're already in situations where maybe they're not feeling stability and love consistently from somebody who wants them.
That is true.
So maybe your child, I don't know if we always can say that child is doing without. They may not be able to do, they may have to be, I guess, maybe more intentional with their selections, because mommy can't do violin and do ballet and do that. Maybe you have to pick one.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I don't think that harms the child. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I don't think that harms the child. We have to be careful about putting some of our childhood aspirations on what they may need.
True. But I guess what I'm saying is that lots of times exposure can be the best teacher. Right. But I feel like I wasn't exposed to that many things because of money and then obviously culture. Yeah. Whereas my dad was like, well, all you got to do is study. Yeah. Where, colleges, they want a well-rounded individual. Yeah. But my parents didn't understand that. And although I'm different, I may understand that. But if I'm not in a position, at the end of the day, I'm a provider. And if I can't provide the way I think and feel that I need to provide, I'm not a happy person. Yeah. So yes,
I think and I totally understand that, because it's your life intertwined with the child. But I think that those are things that you have to take to God. Those are things that you have to really meditate on. You have to really meditate on, almost like this pros and cons list of what's going to happen. You know, with this child, you do know certainly what you can't provide if you're never around. And that's, you know what I'm trying to say? Again, you have to take yourself into account. You do have to take yourself into account and your mental state and whether or not that's something that you want to do. But if it's something that you really want to do, I wouldn't think about what you can't give them. I would think about what they're not receiving that you certainly have the power to give. And, you know, and again, that doesn't mean that you leave yourself out of the equation, but it does mean, you know, try not to find the ways that you can't provide. Try to find the ways that you can. And the love that you have, even in just having this conversation, means that there's something that you have to offer that they're not getting right now. You know, they're part of a system right now.
We got homework to do. Oh, it's some great perspective, though. Great perspective. So the play,
I'm Still a Woman.
I'm Still a Woman.
August 25th at Match Theater at 3400 Main Street. You can get your tickets at HoustonPlayOnPurpose.com. Come and know that this is a safe space. And every one of these characters, you'll feel like you can find a piece of yourself in them. You know, these are women of color who are experiencing, you know, there's nothing phenomenal about what I wrote. I just wrote about us. You know, I find a lot of times people feel like they have to come up with these extraordinary characters. And, you know, my characters don't have no superpowers. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is nothing that extraordinary. I think we're just telling the truth. And I think that in these women revealing their truths, you might also be able to acknowledge your own and be able to move forward in a healthy way into motherhood or just continuing your queendom, whatever that is.
Hey, there you go. Everyone, I'm going to have this information in the show notes. Be sure that's today's action item is to buy a ticket.
Yes.
Is to direct. Choose wisely.
Eat your vegetables and buy your ticket. Yes.
Yes, but definitely please come out and support the play if you're in Houston, Texas. Also, once again, it's about creating safe spaces in order for us to have this open dialogue. So acknowledge your truth. Have this conversation with your husband, your sister, your brother, aunts, uncles, anyone, your community, like whoever is your community. Make sure you have this conversation with them. And also make sure you're open enough to receive the conversation if you're not initiating it. Remember, I believe in you. Personal connection leads to an influential network. Thanks for networking with Michelle.